This show is brought to you by SalCal Real Estate Connections. Good evening. Welcome to the Telescope View. We're here tonight with the author of The Final Revelation, The Sun Project, co-host Rick Teles, and of course, one of our favorite Martians, Steve Parker, and of course, Larry Mangello. And tonight's show is kind of a special show tonight as we are in the Easter season. And typically, you think about church during Easter, and that's going to be our subject tonight. And boy, let me tell you, there's a lot of things that needs to be talked about with that, Rick, and I think you're loaded for bear tonight.
Well, I think so. I mean, the only thing that scares me is I went to Catholic school, and I'm afraid, what are the nuns going to do to me for this?
Oh, never mind, the lightning that comes into the studio.
Man. What does the church know about the UFO phenomenon and extraterrestrial life on Earth? Do they know anything? This is the question.
Of course they do. They know about everything.
Well, when you say church, do you mean the Vatican?
We're going to be talking a little bit about the Vatican, okay? There are a lot of people who believe that the secrets to the extraterrestrial involvement on Earth lie deep in the Vatican archives, that they know something there. And the interesting part about this is not long ago, WikiLeaks came out, if you believe WikiLeaks, and some of the stuff they say is true, some not so true. They appeared to confirm those beliefs. And the other thing is, when I heard that, I thought that was interesting because some of the people I spoke with said the same thing. The sources that I worked with said, and this was a little hard to believe, but one of the most focused and darkest espionage programs is aimed at obtaining ET-related information from Vatican archives. Nobody can get in there. We're talking about governments trying to find out about this. The US government, the Russian government. They're trying to worm their way into the Vatican archives to find out what they might know about extraterrestrial life. Exactly for why, I'm not really sure.
They go through extreme measures to keep that a guarded secret, let me tell you.
I spoke to one guy and said that the measures they take to protect the Vatican, to protect this information, basically they're authorized to use any means necessary. So some of the stories you start to hear, you start to wonder. And I said to them, what about the Counterintelligence Corps, which we've talked about before? This was an intelligence group that was in the United States after World War II, and of course with the whole communism issue. They were pretty, they were dangerous people. Okay, and
I see that they're like part of CIA or where? What do you?
No, they were part of the United States Army actually,
Really?
the Counterintelligence Corps. They were pretty intense individuals, and I remember one guy saying if somebody said that they were threatened by the CIC, that they would find their bones in the desert if they gave out information, he said, "I believe it." And that same guy said to me, he goes, "You know what?" He goes, "I don't know if this is true." He goes, "But I would believe it if somebody said that to protect the Vatican information, they would go to the same means if they had to." So. That was interesting. So I've heard it now. You hear it from WikiLeaks. I heard it from the people I spoke to. We've long heard that there's a lot of information that people have never known, secrets that we've never known. In fact, I heard recently that many people, or a lot of us, believe that when the libraries in Alexandria were burned, we lost a lot of information. But there are a lot of people now who believe that copies of that information had already been transferred to the Vatican archives. So they may know some of this information that was lost in the libraries at Alexandria.
When you talk about the Vatican and stuff, is that like the movie The Da Vinci Code, or?
Well, you know, yes. I mean, Da Vinci Code was after the same thing. There's information.
That's right.
That nobody can get to. It's very hard to get any information out of the Vatican archives. Some people say, well, you can do research there. You can. But to do the research, you have to have a specific question, very specific. Was so-and-so around in the 3rd century BC at this place? That's how specific. You don't get to go in there like a library and research through books.
Okay.
Their people will go in, look and see if there's any information for your question and bring out that information.
Okay.
And that's it. So we're talking about this and people are saying, oh, that's crazy stuff. Yeah, everything we talk about here is kind of crazy stuff. However, in support of these claims, you need to know that a number of years ago, Monsignor Corrado Balducci,
Irish gentleman.
yes, he was Irish.
He was Speaker of the House, I think.
Yeah, he was a close theologian, or he was a close friend of John Paul II, and he was a very respected Vatican theologian.
Wow.
He went on, he was given permission by the Pope, John Paul, to go on Italian TV and speak about extraterrestrial life. He was given permission to do so. And he conceded that extraterrestrial contact is a real phenomenon. And he said, quote, it is not due to psychological impairment. Because people at the time were saying, well, people who see.
Yeah, yeah.
He said, no, according to the Vatican, this is a real event, and it's not due to psychological impairment.
So you're saying there's some sort of connection between the Vatican and then extraterrestrials and all this other stuff we normally talk about?
Yes.
That the church could be connected to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Or they know things that
Well, they
we
know
don't
a lot of
know.
things.
Really?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about these pictures behind me in just a second.
I know, I'm looking, I'm looking at that.
Balducci at that time proclaimed that extraterrestrial people are a part of God's creation. I can understand that because you have God and then you have religion. God is above everything else. Did God create everything? Well, I got to tell you, and I've said this before on this show, as I learn more and more things, you take a physics or you go to physics and you learn more about physics, you take a physics class, this didn't happen by accident. It's too perfect. The other thing I learned is you never say never. And the third thing I learned is Earth science is so immature, there's no possible way we can understand the grandeur of the universe. So Balducci described, this is the way he described them, and I will read it. Extraterrestrials, he described them as humanoid beings, which are like humans. Where did we hear that before? The guys told me the same thing in the book. They're like humans with both a spiritual and material nature, quote, and a physical body, which means that to move through space, they need spacecraft. Why are you so specific about extraterrestrials? Extraterrestrials, they're out there, you know, and they could come here at any time. But he was very specific, and you can actually go, and you can see this, you can find a video of this television show, and if you can understand Italian and understand exactly what he was saying. So now he said that they exist, they're a real phenomenon, and that they are humanoid like humans, and that they need spacecraft to travel to space. He said this as a statement, not as a, oh, we think this. So interesting to talk about that. He said more.
He referenced some very interesting things.
He did, and something that's been a question for all of us, or has been a question for science for a long time here. He made a reference to something called natura non facit saltus.
You know what that is?
No,
Okay.
I'm glad you didn't try to say it.
Natura non facit saltus. That means the nature makes no jumps.
That's it.
Okay? So what he's describing there is, and this is real interesting, and this is a concept that it's accepted by all theologians today.
The nature makes no
jumps.
Okay.
So what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know how we talk about the missing link? Basically what he's saying is there's a missing link out there.
Okay.
That we went from here, kind of crawling around on all fours or threes, to all of a sudden this upright creature. And scientists said, what's the missing link? You've heard that term.
Yep.
We're trying to find the missing link. He made this comment during this conversation, all right, in association with this guy. He's talking about aliens. Then he's talking about that nature makes no jump. Are they connected? Is there a missing link? And are extraterrestrials a missing link? You can go and look this up. You can go and look up Balducci. You can look it up what he said. So are the ETs the missing link that science is looking for? And if they are the missing link, what kind of link are they? What is their involvement in our existence? And we're not going to talk about that here. So we're
No,
going
but
to
there was just a thing, Rick, and I know we can look into it for a later show. But there was something that came out the news the other day about something they found some sort of civilization that the average height of the humans that they found, the average height was 3 feet tall, and that was on regular news.
They've had humans 3 feet tall. They've had humans 7 feet tall.
Oh wow!
Yes.
The land of the giants, California, the red-haired giants,
they talk
Georgia, they
about-
found tribes.
Yes.
They were driven out by the smaller ones. But there's more. There's always more. In 2005, Vatican astronomer Guy Consolmagno said that humankind is facing a future discovery of extraterrestrial intelligence.
Wow.
Vatican astronomer Guy Consolmagno said, 2005, humankind is facing a future discovery of extraterrestrial intelligence. Not life, intelligence.
There's a Vatican astronomer.
This is, they have everything.
Really?
They have everything.
Oh, sure they do.
Okay. In 2008, Vatican chief astronomer Father Jose Gabriel Funes stated that the discovery of intelligent extra life and its existence on planets Earth as well as Earth doesn't contradict their faith. No, it doesn't. I can understand that. I can understand that God exists and created everything, including extraterrestrials.
God created,
including
that's
everything.
right, beings and
Right.
And I guess what would really come to my mind is Christmas. And when you say when Christ was born, there was a star that these, the three wise men supposedly followed through the night to bring him to.
A lot of discussion about that star. Was it a supernova that then just went away like they said? Was it something? Nobody. That's a whole other discussion.
Oh, I
that
know,
comes into
I know.
this.
But they pop into my brain while you're talking. I can't help it. I'm sorry.
In 2015, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut, walked on the moon.
Yeah.
Okay. He wrote an email to John Podesta, who at the time was the political consultant.
Yeah, for
and he was
Kennedy, yeah.
For Clinton.
or Clinton.
And subsequently, he was going to be Clinton's White House chief of staff. Now, what he was doing, he wrote Mitchell wrote an email to John Podesta confirming a meeting that the two of them were going to have. And in his email, he said something. He told Podesta, "My Catholic colleague Terry Mansfield will be there too to bring us up to date on the Vatican's awareness of ETI, extraterrestrial intelligence."
Intelligence.
Okay, you can find this email. In 2017, Podesta, if you know anything about UFOs right now, he's really into this. He wants them to release more information. He tried to get it under the Clinton administration. It was not given to him.
That's right.
The guys I talked to made a comment, no way we're giving those guys any information. But he said in 2017, he stated, "My biggest failure of 2014 was once again not securing the disclosure of the UFO files."
Yep.
So we're up to 2017 now here, people talking about UFO files, talking about the Vatican being involved in these UFO files. And it's all very interesting stuff. Now, in the years since all these, the Balducci statements, it's important to know that the Dalai Lama, Jewish rabbis in Israel, and Muslim authorities of Turkey have all conceded the existence of extraterrestrial life. But here's the interesting thing. All right, maybe it exists, maybe it didn't. The Vatican seems to be saying it did. We have some artwork behind me. These are all famous religious paintings. The one that we have right here is from 1710. That's called the Gelder's Baptism of Christ.
Oh.
Okay? And here we see Christ being baptized. And we see these rays coming down. And we see this object up here. And what does that look like to you? Circular object?
Yeah.
Some type of light in the center? Now, would we call that kind of a traditional flying saucer? We might. In the 1800s, when you found this photo, you might not, or this painting, you might not say that. That's a baptism of Christ.
Interesting enough, though, I've heard people describe that light as being a dove on the craft. And that is in the Bible, about the doves come to Christ when he was born.
And that's a good point. But when was the Bible written? When the Bible was written, did anybody know anything about airplanes? They know anything about spacecraft?
I doubt it.
You might describe a chariot or a spacecraft as a chariot. Might define an airplane as a dove.
That's right.
That's why it's important to look at some of these things with 21st century eyes. In 1970, or I believe it was 1970, an archaeologist revisited some of the great archaeological finds with 20th century vision instead of 18th century, and he found a whole different thing. But I guess it could be a dove, but it doesn't look like a dove. Over here we have the Annunciation. Okay, when Mary was told that she was going to be the mother of Christ. This was done in 1486. There's a light coming down, shining on Mary. What does that look like right there?
Yeah.
Another classic. This was done in 1486.
These are paintings that were done back then?
Yes, they're famous.
They're famous.
Thank God.
What does that look like? See, Steve is looking at this saying, well, wait a minute. Yeah, it does look odd. It looks like some type of flying craft up there. A ringed craft, might be portholes or lights, with a beam coming down. How many times in UFO reports have we heard circular craft or ringed craft, lights coming down? Down here we have a photo of the Madonna. You can't see the whole, not a photo, a painting of the Madonna from the 1400s.
Okay.
She's holding the baby, Jesus. But what we've done is up over her shoulder, you have this image.
Yep.
And it's blown up here so you can see it. What does that look like?
Wow.
Wow.
Looks like a saucer.
But we're not done yet. Let's do a few more.
Oh, boy.
This is, you have seen this photo many times, but you haven't seen it in the whole fresco. You've seen just the one piece.
Yes,
This is the crucifixion of Christ. Up here we have an object with a man appearing to be sitting in it. Most people have seen this one. There's a man sitting in this.
like a craft.
It looks like some type of craft traveling. I mean, if you didn't have some of the rays, you might say it's a half moon.
Yeah.
But what does it look like? Painted in 1350. Now, they say these paintings were done based on information from the Bible and from other stuff. You got to remember the Bible is an interesting book. The Bible is based on 3 Greek codices, in particular 2 of those codices. And most of the Bible is based on those 2 codices. The interesting thing about those codices is between those 2, there's 1,000 differences.
Boy.
And this is just Christian faith. We have to go into the Jewish faith.
Oh, yeah.
We have to go into Muslim. We have to go into, all these other ones.
All of them.
Here's another one. This is a little different one. This is called Triumph of Summer Tapestry. We all remember the Triumph of Summer, right? These are harder to see. Here, here, and here. They're dome-shaped objects. And these, what you're seeing here, are some of the most prominent and infamous paintings or works of art. And as people study them, they're seeing these things. And this was done in 1538.
Yeah.
So now,
What did he see?
what I like to do is you start adding all these things up. At first, you look at this and say, is this possible? No, it's kind of crazy. But wait a minute. You have Baldacci saying one thing. You have the Pope giving him permission to say it. You have another Vatican astronomer saying something else. You have these people that I spoke to, who so far everything they've said has bared out to be true. They're saying the same thing. The Vatican knows something. We go down, we see that even in 2017, somebody from the Vatican was going to talk about what the Vatican's awareness is of ETI, extraterrestrial intelligence. We hear about the Dalai Lama. We hear about other things. And then we go back and we look at some of these paintings. And what are we seeing there? Does this kind of add up to say that there's evidence here that could suggest this is being very true? I don't know. If we went into a court of law, we'd have a pretty strong case, I think,
Not
here.
kidding. There's more to it.
So,
I heard somewhere that somebody said one time on one of the programs I was listening to that Adam and Eve were aliens.
Well, there's different theory on that.
there is, yes. Well, are they aliens? Are they creations of aliens? This is another show.
Yeah.
We've heard, we go
I
all
can't
the-
wait to see all these other
we,
shows.
we go all the way back to the Anunnaki.
The what?
The Anunnaki, which is one of
Anunnaki,
the
yeah.
earliest civilizations to ever have writing. And usually you see them, they would communicate by writing with these little triangles. It looks like they pressed it into the clay or whatever. And they said there were a number of gods. And that when the gods arrived, each god kind of owned their own little city-state. And they weren't supposed to interact with the humans at the time, but they needed workers. And they found that the humans that were here at the time weren't sufficient for their needs, so they improved them.
Hybrids.
Hybrids. The other
You
interesting
understand that?
Yeah, like part alien and part whatever.
The other interesting thing that if you look at the stories that the Anunnaki tell is the way these gods would get these city-states or these. When we at the end of World War II, and we went in and we occupied Japan, what did we do? We named somebody, MacArthur, to be the governor of that area. And he named other people to be governors of regions. Very similar to what might have happened here. You come somewhere, you take over or you occupy, you name your people to control things. The Romans did the same thing as they created different cities. The Greeks did the same thing. So what are we listening? And the Anunnaki are very descriptive. We can talk about them some more.
On another program.
It's just too much.
Well, we can't
Are they
squeeze
telling-
everything in one show.
Are they telling us that now more and more people are reading the stories that the Anunnaki wrote and saying, wait a minute, there's more to this. I mean, then we get into the Egyptians and some of the things they had, and how they had carvings of things that looked like submarines and whatever. So would all this information possibly be in the Vatican archives? Absolutely it would. I think there's things in there we can't even imagine. That's
Well,
I think there's things in there we can't even read.
In the crux of the show, Rick, Pope Francis made his statement about God and what God created everything and everybody. That and religion are 2 different things.
Very different. It raises the question, and in a way, this is what the book's about. Are we the children of God, or are we not? Are we the next in line,
Yes.
or are we not? Some people believe yes. Some people believe
I
no.
know the answer I'm sticking with.
Okay, and you know, and you know, the thing that comes out is, you know, and again, I went to all the Catholic schools.
Yeah.
I can't help but to understand, you know, think that, you know, God has got to be some incredibly powerful. In fact, aliens spoke about the concept of God. Again, we'll talk about that later. But something so powerful and so knowledgeable, which I believe exists, kind of messed up with us. But hey, we're kind of flawed.
Well, you know, that's life in general.
Yep.
It just, you cannot have a road map that's perfect,
Right. Even no matter who you are, right?
no matter who you are, is absolutely
You have
correct.
a lot of people, Rick, when you go places, because I'm sure you meet a lot of people, you just don't stay here in the studio all the time. But when you go
I
to
do.
places and you go to parties, and do people are drawn to you when you start this stuff, or do they start backing away from you slowly?
You get two different things. You get one group of people who want to know more.
Yeah.
And you find them in the oddest place. People I would never expect would be interested in something like this. Then you get some people, you can look at them and they back away a bit. And I try to figure out why that is, because most people will have, at least I'll get people who want to know more, people who have an open mind and say, oh, that's an interesting, and people who back away. And I've come to the conclusion that when you start to say some of these things, and actually my son pointed this out to me, is if you start to believe this, then you kind of have to reconsider your life, because everything that you believe to be true in your life may not be true. I don't think that's such a bad thing. Okay, we're learning, we're getting better. But when I ask them sometimes, why do you believe in such a thing? They have absolutely no answer. And the answer is because that's what you've been told for 40, 50 years. How do you know that's true? And again, they don't have an answer. They may have an anecdotal answer. They may say because of this. I said, but you don't know
That's
that.
because of what they've been taught.
Right.
And Rick,
We can't expand beyond
and
that.
I've been with you. We've been in places like Starbucks where we'd be talking, and out of clear blue, someone would bring up the subject. And
Or they hear us talking and they get pulled into what we're saying.
let me
Yeah.
tell you, that happens frequently.
I will never. I won't forget the one where we were talking, and I asked the guy. I said, "Let me ask you one question. Do human beings belong on Earth? What do we contribute to Earth?" And he stopped and he looked at me, and I said, "Let's look at this." I said, "Every creature is part of the life cycle. Every creature on Earth, whether it be a slug, a worm." He goes,
Lion.
"What about a shark?"
Yeah.
I said, "A shark is a scavenger. It cleans the ocean." I said, "What do? We consume. And what do we give back? Nothing. We consume. Are we a parasite? Are we supposed to be giving something back? Is this a test for us? Are we supposed to be developing? What do we do here? Anybody who can tell me what do we contribute to the earth, and I don't want an anecdotal or a metaphysical answer to this. I want to say, show me how we're part of the life cycle.
That's right.
When we pull everything from the earth, but we're putting back nothing. You see where I'm getting at? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that confuses me because I don't see what we contribute.
Do you go out? Do you go out and speak to people about this stuff
We do.
in the area?
Yeah.
You do. Okay.
Yeah.
That
And
or-
some people love that
Yeah.
discussion. They say, well, that's a pretty good point.
We are due to have a performance at some point.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to have to get together and have a
Well,
little,
people can contact us and contact you through us.
We'll put on a little show about everything, and you know, and believe me, it's so interesting when you do it because the people got different concepts of everything. You know?
Well, you know, it's interesting as we start to talk about this extraterrestrial involvement in any civilization or any type of life is NASA recently, when they were talking about, they all had another article, and I get these all the time, the NASA updates. They're talking about the possibility of a particular asteroid that may have brought life to Mars. They didn't want to talk about that, but we've always talked about, did life come to Earth on a comet or on all those asteroids? It's called the panspermia theory. If you can get there and say life came from somewhere else on this, you can start to go up the chain and say maybe life came some other way, even a little bit more sophisticated. The octopus, for example,
That's right.
which uses, it has DNA, but it uses its RNA to change it as it needs to be changed. Nothing else in the world can do that. They describe it as an alien creature.
In
recently,
reality,
the biologist.
and when you think about it, that's the real deal.
It is.
You know?
It is.
Wow.
Well, I'll tell you, Rick, it's as usual.
Blowing our minds.
You know, this subject here about the church could go on for a lot of shows.
Yeah.
At some point, I'd like to get a viewpoint from a priest or somebody involved, you know, into that kind of thing, and it'd be very interesting to get their viewpoint.
Okay.
You know? And as usual, time is flying, Steve.
Oh, incredible.
And we're going to have to say goodnight. And I'm going to tell you, please email us, because we want your viewpoint on this subject. And believe me, Rick, you are right on tonight. I'll tell you, I think we could go on for hours and hours.
Oh, easily on these.
Without-
Who was the Easter Bunny?
Well, not-
That's what I want.
I can't tell you that. You want to get in trouble? Okay.
Easter.
Well, we're going to cut it. We don't want to get too far with this one. Thank you and good night.